Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Good Girl Box podcast. I'm your host, Karen, and I am so glad you're joining me today. We've been exploring the theme of boundaries as we break free from the Good Girl Box that so many of us have been placed in. In the last episode, we talked about physical boundaries, what they are, why they matter, and how they help us reclaim our space in the world. Today, we're going to dive even deeper into the world of boundaries by talking about emotional and mental boundaries. For many of us, these kinds of boundaries can be the most challenging to set. They can feel invisible and abstract, but they are just as crucial as physical boundaries for living a life that's true to ourselves. So, what exactly are emotional and mental boundaries? Let's start with emotional boundaries. These boundaries help protect our feelings and emotions. They define where our emotional responsibilities end and where another person's begin. Emotional boundaries help us navigate relationships by ensuring that we don't take on others' emotions as our own, and they remind us that it's okay to prioritize our own feelings. If you grew up being a good girl, you might have been taught to put other people's feelings first, to be the caretaker, the peacekeeper, the one who keeps everyone happy. You might have learned to sacrifice your own needs to avoid conflict or to keep the peace in your family. While this might have kept things running smoothly on the surface, it can come at a significant cost. Over time, it can lead to feeling emotionally drained, resentful, and disconnected from yourself. Let's think about some examples of emotional boundaries in action. Have you ever had a friend or family member who would call you up, vent about their problems, and then leave you feeling like you were carrying the weight of their struggles? Or maybe you found yourself feeling guilty or responsible when a loved one is upset, even when their feelings have nothing to do with you. In these moments, your emotional boundaries might be getting blurred. Setting emotional boundaries means recognizing that while we can be compassionate and supportive, we are not responsible for fixing other people's feelings. It means saying, I hear you and I care about what you're going through, but I can't carry this for you. It's about giving yourself permission to step back and to protect your own emotional energy. This doesn't mean being cold or uncaring. It means caring for yourself alongside caring for others. Now, let's shift to mental boundaries. These are boundaries that protect our thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. They help us maintain our sense of identity and give us the space to think independently, even when others might disagree with us. Mental boundaries are about being able to say, I respect your opinion, but I see things differently, without feeling the need to conform or change your beliefs to fit in. For those of us who have grown up with the pressure to be a good girl, mental boundaries can be especially difficult to set. We might have been conditioned to avoid disagreement, to keep our thoughts to ourselves, or to defer to the opinions of authority figures in our lives. This conditioning can lead to a fear of speaking up or of being seen as difficult or contrary. But when we don't set mental boundaries, we risk losing sight of our own voice. Let's talk about why emotional and mental boundaries are so important. Without these boundaries, we can easily become enmeshed in other people's emotions and opinions. We can start to feel like we have to take on their problems or adjust our beliefs to match theirs. This can make it difficult to separate what we truly feel and think from what others expect of us. We might start to doubt our own judgment or feel anxious about making decisions on our own. But when we establish strong emotional and mental boundaries, we create a sense of clarity. We begin to understand where our feelings end and another person's begin. We recognize that it's okay to disagree, and that our opinions are just as valid as anyone else's. Emotional and mental boundaries give us the freedom to explore our own inner worlds without the constant pressure to conform. One of the most powerful things we can do is to give ourselves permission to feel our emotions fully, without judgment. And just as importantly, to understand that it's okay to let other people feel their emotions fully too. We don't have to take on their sadness, their anger, or their anxiety. We can listen, empathize, and offer support without feeling like it's our job to fix things. And when it comes to mental boundaries, it's about trusting yourself to think critically and independently. It's about giving yourself the space to hold your own beliefs, even when they're unpopular or different from those around you. When we strengthen our mental boundaries, we learn that our thoughts and ideas matter, and we become more confident in expressing them. But let's be real, setting emotional and mental boundaries is not easy, especially when we've been conditioned to prioritize other people's needs and opinions over our own. It can feel uncomfortable, even scary, to assert these boundaries, especially when those around us might be used to us saying yes all the time or agreeing with them to keep the peace. It's not uncommon to worry about being seen as selfish or distant, but I want to remind you that setting boundaries is not about creating distance. It's about creating a healthy space where true connection can happen. When we set boundaries, we're being honest with ourselves and others about what we need and where our limits are. And this honesty allows us to show up as our true selves, rather than pretending to be someone we're not. So, how can we start setting emotional and mental boundaries in our everyday lives? Here are a few practical steps. 1. Identify your feelings. Take time to notice how you feel in different situations. Are there moments when you feel overwhelmed by someone else's emotions? Or when you feel pressured to agree with someone else's opinion? Recognizing these moments is the first step to understanding where your boundaries need to be. 2. Practice saying, I. Statements. When asserting a boundary, use statements like, I feel, I need, or I think. For example, I feel overwhelmed when we talk about this topic, and I need a break. Or, I think I see things differently, and that's okay. This helps you take ownership of your feelings and thoughts without blaming or accusing others. 3. Set limits with empathy. Remember, it's possible to set a boundary while still being kind and empathetic. You can say, I want to support you, but I need some time to recharge. Or, I hear your perspective, but I also need space to explore my own. 4. Know that it's a process. Boundaries don't have to be perfect, and they don't have to be rigid. It's okay to experiment and find what works for you. And remember, it's normal to feel some pushback when you start asserting your needs. It's a sign that you're doing the work to protect your emotional and mental well-being. As we close today's episode, I hope you feel empowered to start exploring what emotional and mental boundaries look like for you. Remember, this is a journey, one that takes time, practice, and a whole lot of self-compassion. But every time you honor your own feelings and thoughts, you are taking a step toward living more authentically. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can leave a review, reach out to me on social media, or share this episode with a friend who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, where we'll talk about setting boundaries in relationships and how to navigate the challenges that come with them. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for choosing to step outside the box with me. Until next time, keep trusting your voice and honoring your truth.